candy.
Ready? Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Monday Movie Night here on Penny Candy, and we are back. I have been gone for a long time as far as like making full-length videos is concerned. It's been rough. I've had some physical issues and I'm getting better and we're back at it. So today, since it's been a while and it's, Halloween season, I decided to do a top 10 list. A spooky, ooky, kooky Halloween special. The top 10 black horror films. The only movie I will not be talking about today, not in any length, is The Night of the Living Dead. Yes, it has a black lead. And yes, it speaks to what goes on, what was going on at the time of that film. When you hear George A. Romero talk about that film, it kind of all just happened, happenstance. He hired the guy, and we'll talk about him later, but he hired the guy because he was the best actor, not because he wanted to say something with his blackness on screen. He has defended that. He has said it over and over again. I did not hire him because he was black and I had something to say. I hired him because he was the best actor in the room. That's why Night of the Living Dead is one of my favorite movies of all time. Not just one of my favorite horror movies, but one of my favorite movies. George A. Romero was a genius, okay? Is a genius. But it is unclear on the intent of the first film. The films after it definitely had a more clear intent. So let's get started, because I could talk about horror and blackness all day long, and the ideas of it and everything. I could do that all day. And how Spike Lee is not good at it. So let's go. Number 10, Sugar Hill. This film was directed by Paul Maslansky, the director of Police Academy and Return to Oz. Random AF. And just like a lot of black films in the 70s, and we will not be using the word blaxploitation today because I could a couple of times. The films really varied wildly, and I always say I was born in the wrong era because those films were something else. And this film sort of happened upon my desk, as it were, while I was really doing my research on a lot of 70s black films. And it really shocked me at how good it is. Is it scary? Sometimes. I mean, it's more creepy than anything else, but it's got some freaky scenes. The zombies with their eyes that they're kind of covered with this crystallized silver thing, and it's supposed to be, I don't know, it's weird. This movie is basically a revenge film. Now, I love Pam Grier, but it seems like they always tried to ugly her up for her film roles, and she was a stunning woman. It's hard to ugly up Pam Grier, but it was like they always wanted to muss her up. Marky Bay, on the other hand, never one time is out of place. She is sharp from top to bottom. From the beginning to the end of this film, Marky Bay is stunning. I don't know where they got this woman from, and she hasn't been in much, and she's still alive. So I do recommend it. It's way down on my list for a number of reasons. It's kind of slow. The lines are kind of stupid. And the zombies, while creepy, they're fine. You can find it on Blu-ray. I recommend buying it. It's definitely available, but support this movie because I would love to see a remake of this. This is one of those films that deserves a remake. Number 9, Sweetheart. This film came out last year. I avoided it mainly because of the title. I don't know, it kept popping up on my Netflix as a horror film, but the name of this thing was Sweetheart, and I'm like, what? And then when I read the description of it, I was like, that sounds stupid. And there's a reason why it's so low on my list, but it did make my list. It actually shocked the shit out of me. Black female lead, and that's basically it. There are 2 white characters that show up, and then there's one white guy that dies at the beginning. But the 2 white characters that show up do not last. This film was directed by J.D. Dillard. J.D. Dillard also directed Slight, which I have not seen. But now I have to see it because he shocked me with this one. There was no backstory here. She's just washed up on the shore of this deserted island with this half-dead guy. That's it. That's it. We don't get we get a little bit of a backstory later, but it's still kind of unclear what actually happens. Okay, so the 2 white people show up and they're on a raft, I guess, that crashed out of this boat that they were on. And she tries to get in it later. She gets in it later, and there's blood on the floor of the raft. And she looks at it and she's trying to figure out, like, why is there blood here? We are led to believe that something happened in that raft. We'll never know, though, because this movie does not require a sequel. It's not enough to require a sequel, but a line of dialogue would have made why she saw blood on the floor of the raft clearer. The girl is badass through the whole movie. The first half of it is just her trying to figure out how to eat, where to sleep, how to build a fire, only to find out that there is a monster in the ocean dragging dead people or dead things or animals or fish or whatever back to the ocean and eating it. For what seems like a low-budget film, the monster design is actually really, really solid, and I feel intimidated by it up until we see the whole thing. Once we see the whole thing and we can tell that it's some guy in a suit with partial, very, very little CGI, it loses something. Also, it gets stupid when the white people show up because they're awful. And I don't know if they're written to be awful or if they're supposed to be awful, but they're awful people, and the people acting them are awful. They're terrible. I definitely recommend it for someone who's into films like Predator, because that's basically what this is. So imagine Predator if they started it right on the island, or right on, where were they? Singapore? Something like that. Right where they were, right on the island or whatever. And it was just Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he had no weapons. That's what this is. This is Predator with just Arnold starting there. We didn't get the whole thing where we met the team and all that other stuff. It was just island monster. And it deserves a lot more than I think it gets. Number 8, Ganja Hess. Oh boy, so this film came out in 1973. What can I say about Ganja Hess? This movie is wild. It is an art house film, and if you are not familiar with art house films are basically films that do not have a solid strand of plot. It does not have dialogue that moves the story along. You may get a line here and a line there, but for the most part, it is visuals, sound, music, and they tell the story through the medium instead of letting the medium tell the story. It has long, lingering shots on nothing. And all you do is hear stuff. Sometimes you just see a wall and a chair or something, and you just hear what's happening. It doesn't hold your hand. You have to kind of be ready to turn off your brain. Not even turn off, to reset your brain. And art house in the 60s and 70s was another breed. Art house now, stuff like Lamb, where it's still sort of a linear story, but it's so off kilter that now it can be considered art house. Back then though, art house was a different kind of medium. We got movies like Deathbed, The Bed That Eats. It is very black, and it definitely tells a very, very black story. I really respect Bill Gunn. He did a lot of work on TV. He did a lot of work in films. He did a lot of work with Bill Cosby. back when, back before. He really says something here. It's hard to tell you what happens, but for the most part, it's just about two vampires, about a vampire who falls in love with a woman and makes her a vampire. It gets real deep into its own spirituality. It is definitely one of those films where you feel like, oh, this thinks it's more important than it is. No, it's important and it knows it's important. It's definitely, I recommend this for people who are into films that make them think and challenge their ideas of what horror should or should not be. Also, it stars Dwayne Jones, who was in Night of the Living Dead, and he acts his ass off in this. Number 7, Vampire in Brooklyn. Okay, so a lot of people are not going to be happy with me putting this above Ganja and Hess. A lot of people don't like this film, and rightfully so. It's not a great movie, but it's blackety black. You know what? This was at the height of Eddie Murphy's reign of power in Hollywood. This was after Coming to America and Harlem Nights and Beverly Hills Cop, and it was after all those films. And he had really, no pun intended, sank his teeth into the industry. And I think it was also at a time where they told Eddie Murphy, who was also the star of Holy Man and Meet Dave, that he could do whatever he wanted. He got with Wes Craven, who's one of the greatest horror directors of all time, and said, let's make Ganja and Hess, but let's make it funny. Listen, Angela Bassett is in this. So the funny thing about this movie is that even though this was top Eddie Murphy time, Eddie Murphy is not funny in this. I think he has like a couple funny moments, but for the most part, he plays it entirely straight. He has this Hungarian, Eastern European, Transylvanian, accent that is just awful. And I'm wondering if it was intentionally funny or if he was really trying to do something. I think Eddie Murphy is a really good impressionist? No, I don't know. He can do voices good. I don't know. I feel like this is one of those moments where it's subjective as to whether or not Eddie Murphy was really trying to have a Eastern European accent or if he was playing it for laughs. Angela Bassett plays it straight. It's hard for Angela Bassett to be what I would consider funny. This was also at the height of Angela Bassett's reign. This was post Malcolm X. This was post What's Love Got to Do with It. So, they were basically just having a good time making a fun film. And I think people took it too seriously. And this film has tone problems, okay? Because Eddie Murphy and Angela Bassett are playing it straight. But everybody else is playing it for laughs. While it has good, funny moments, it reads like a horror film that wants to be funny. It feels like they're trying to make a serious vampire film only to spice it with comedic actors. I don't know. I love this film only because it does not take itself too seriously. That's the thing. It more often than not does not take itself seriously. The scenes with Eddie Murphy and Angela Bassett, for some reason, they don't work. I want them to work and they don't. Funny thing, I have only seen it like 2 or 3 times and I kind of love it. And I don't know, I think Wes Craven has a better eye for comedy than he thinks he does, than he thought he did. Do I recommend this? Meh. If you've seen it, you've seen it, and you either have an opinion either way about it. Nobody sits in the middle on this film. Either you love this film or you hate this film. Watch it, don't watch it, doesn't matter. It's a classic. Number 6, The People Under the Stairs. Again, here we are. Wes Craven, 90s. For some reason, the guy look at Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is one of the most comedic horror icons of all time. You put him in there with Chucky and the demon, the Deadites from The Evil Dead. these are wild and comedic entities. And I feel like The People Under the Stairs captured something that Vampire in Brooklyn wish it had. We have a lead whose name is Fool, and he's a boy, he's a little black boy, running through this house of these insane white people that are holding people literally under the, like it's literally in the basement. The title of this film is exactly what it is. Of course, we don't really see the people under the stairs until like halfway through the film. The first half of this film is us understanding what this film is. It is a commentary on Black culture as it pertains to slum living and how slum lords take advantage of people and take their money only to kick them out, and take their money only to make the rent higher and those kind of things, and not fix the rat problem, the roach problem, the water problem, the air problem. So this movie definitely had something to say, and I feel like it says all the things. It's just a touch heavy-handed, but Wes Craven has always had something to say, and it's not one thing. He varies wildly. The little boy was in the I'm Bad video, the kid version of I'm Bad by Michael Jackson, so he's definitely, you know, famous at this point. Didn't see him in too much after that. I think he was in a TV show with Brandy. Is that right? Was he in Thea? Is that right? As a horror film, it stands kind of above a lot of the films on this list. The only reason it's number 6 on my list is because they're just movies that are just better films. But as far as this movie having something to say, it's top tier. It's one of Wes Craven's most underrated films, and it's definitely one of the most underrated films of the 90s. I do recommend this if you have not seen it. Number 5, Get Out. I can't say anything that hasn't already been said, so I'm gonna keep this short. Jordan Peele is becoming a horror master, and I don't think any of us saw that coming. With the Key and Peele show, we saw sort of a kind of a Chappelle Show knockoff. That's the way it felt, maybe because of the time it came out, because it was like right after Chappelle Show. So I didn't see a horror director coming out of that duo. Jordan Peele has gone hard horror. These films, yes, they are definitely social commentary and they have something to say, but even the ones that he didn't direct, the ones that he just produced, but Get Out is one of the most inspired directorial debuts of all time. That rarely happens. He had a lot to say, and he said it all concisely and with an artistic flair. He could have said it a lot more straightforward, but this film is kind of nuts. We were at church in that theater watching that movie, and we had a good time, while at the same time it was a lot of yep, no, yeah, I knew it was a lot of that because it was the most relatable Black horror film to happen in a long time, since The People Under the Stairs. And it's a masterpiece. Lakeith Stanfield steals the show. He comes in and outacts the room. This film is spectacular. If you have not seen Get Out yet, you are living under a rock, and you need to see this film. Number 4, His House. After reading the description, I was like, shit, do I want to see this? And it was sort of the same way with Get Out for me. I was like, God damn it. I want to support this, but do I want to see this? Is this going to make me mad? There has been a new wave of grief horror with movies like Mother and Hereditary and The Night House. It's about this couple fleeing a unspecified country in Africa, because it's war-torn and they're trying to find a better life. I'm not going to tell you the plot, but they lose their daughter in the process on a boat. They move to London and lose their minds. It's bleak and it is depressing, but it's so well done and it broke my heart. I think it's important for Black people to see this film, not just because of the overwhelming commentary, but because it speaks to a culture and a place that a lot of Black Americans do not understand. It destroys you the first 12, 15 minutes of it. I don't know Sope Dirisu, and I'm probably fucking that up, but I don't know him that much as an actor. I haven't seen him in too many things, but he is, this film is, his performance in this film is Oscar worthy. Wunmi Mosaku, who you've seen in Loki now, and I think she was in Lovecraft Country. She's inspired in this film. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. This film broke my heart. It made me, I had to watch like Animaniacs after. With all the depressing and bleak and incredible acting, this film's scary. This film has moments where you're like, oh my God, what am I watching? Like it's really, like, it's got a couple of jump scares, but the jump scares are like, okay, so you know how a jump scare in like a movie from the 2000s will have like silence, and then big music cat, it would be like a cat and it would just run off. This has intentional jump scares, much like in The Exorcist 3. And it's things happen, like something like boom, and then it keeps happening. Like there is no like boom and then, oh, we can all go, oh. That's not, to me, that's what a jump scare is. It's, oh, and then we can laugh. No, this has boom, 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 boom. It's like, oh my God. The director of this, Remy Weeks, oh God, like this guy knows what he's doing. I know he's done a lot of like indie stuff and short films. So I don't know, I would love more from this director because this film is so damn good. It's so good. If you have not seen this film, and I know a lot of people have not, and it's still on Netflix, definitely watch this movie. Number 3, Blacula. You knew it was here. You knew it was here, right? You knew it was here. Well, first of all, it came out in 1972, so it's definitely the granddaddy of Black horror films. Nothing was as badass as seeing this Black Dracula clone, but this Black vampire wreck people. There were a lot of Dracula clones in the 70s, mainly because of the Hammer films, but this one I think stands out, not only because of the title, because his name isn't Blacula. He has the actual name in this film. So this film was directed by William Crave, who also directed Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde, which is just awful. You do not speak on Black horror unless you are going to talk about Blacula. It has the legendary William Marshall. William Marshall almost became a Black horror icon. I mean, come on, like he was in so many Black horror films back then and so many Black films back then that I feel like he's one of the most unsung Black actors of all time. This was a thespian. This man could act you under the floor, okay? It's a silly film, but it definitely has tone issues. It is chef's kiss. Vampire in Brooklyn wishes it was Blacula. This film is so dynamic and creepy and brutal. I don't know. I think it could have gotten a lot more brutal, but early 70s horror in general was very light because 60s horror was very red. It was very giallo. This film is better than it has any right to be. I think a lot of people get turned off like Blacula, like Black Dracula? That's stupid. And it's like, well, yes, the title is stupid. I think that was just to get the butts in the seats. I recommend Blacula. You need to see Blacula. If you black and you haven't seen Blacula, we might have to fight. Number 2, Candyman. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about both. I'm gonna try to keep this fast. Clive Barker is... In the original story, Candyman was not black. So the director, Bernard Rose, really took some liberties and had something to say. It's not said entirely well, but out of a pretty middle-of-the-road slasher film, we got one of the most iconic roles of black history. Tony Todd as Candyman is superior iconography to the point where people were, it's sort of like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. It became that for us. We dared not, there's still people that I know now that because of that film, they'll never say Candyman 5 times in a mirror. It was a movie. It wasn't even based on any sort of creepypasta or folklore. This was out of the mind of Clive Barker. And black folk are literally scared to say Candyman 5 times in a mirror. They will not do it. I know people that won't do it. I have friends that won't do it. This movie put its knee on the black community's neck for a solid 20 years, and it's still holding on to people. When they decided to make a remake, a lot of us, me included, were on the fence. Did this movie need a remake? Yes. But also, did this movie need a remake? No. It's sort of like remaking Freddy. Does Freddy Krueger hold up now? Not really. Does it deserve a remake? Yes. Do we need a remake? No. But it absolutely could use one if they would like to bring Freddy to now. People that were born in the 2000s know who Freddy Krueger is from Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger. But to tell that story again and to tell it with our current identity as a community, yes, it deserves that. We don't need it, but it deserves it. The same thing can be said to Candyman. Candyman, the original Candyman, is highly problematic, okay? Even though the director had something to say, it definitely tells a Mandingo story. It's Tony Todd's performance. It has nothing to do with the Mandingo story. When we back away from it and take out Tony Todd's performance, it's a Mandingo story with lines like "Be my victim." It overshadows all that. The remake takes that idea, takes the identity of the original film and creates a new lore. It's not just about this one man anymore. Now it's been passed down through generation and generation. And it became a symbol. It became it's like a sickness within the black community that will never be cured. It's a fire that'll never be quenched, and it spreads, and it usually takes on the identity of one person to take on the mantle of Candyman, of the Candyman, not Candyman the subversion of the trailer of this film made you believe that it was going to be about an actual Candyman who the police killed and they blamed for putting razors in candy, and he comes back and gets revenge. The trailer tricked us to make us believe that that's what it was, and that was not the movie. This movie is so cool. It's so cool. The visuals, the special effects, the way they show these kills is so cool. It has real things to say. It's got some problems, but the problems aren't big enough for us to be like, oh, that was terrible. Even though, of course, there are going to be black people like, that's not the original. No, it's not supposed to be. If they made a remake shot for shot like the original, you would be complaining that it was just like the movie. Nia DaCosta had something new to say. Now it's, but that wasn't like the original. You can't please people. You can't please people. Horror remakes especially should not be shot for shot the same film. The original movie does not work. I love the original movie. I have the original movie deep, deep, deep in my heart. And Tony Todd's performance is spectacular, but it doesn't work. It would not have made my list if it were not for this remake. It's got too many problems. Too many to name. But because of the remake and because of the expansion of the lore, and because it creates a new dimension around the original, both are number 2 on my list. I would say watch them back to back. When this thing comes out on Blu-ray or whatever digital, watch these movies back to back. These movies line up directly with each other, and it's really fucking cool. It's cool, okay? The ending is cool. It's heartbreaking, but it's cool. If you have not seen this movie, I hate you. Before we get to my number 1 pick, let's talk about a few honorable mentions. Antebellum. Abby. Vampires versus the Bronx. Death by Temptation. Beloved. Bad Hair. Number 1, Tales from the Hood. I love this movie. Anthology horror is my favorite genre. I love a good straight story. I do. I love a good complete film. But there's something to be said about anthology horror. Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt. I can't think of any more. Creep Show. You know, I love anthology horror. I really, really do. And Tales from the Hood, again, it's kind of like Blacula, where the title is very much the selling point of this movie. But when you see it, oh, y'all had some real shit to say. It is not a frivolous Stephen King anthology horror film. This film has things it wants to tell you. The legendary Clarence Williams III is in this. This man, again, much like William Marshall, is a thespian, top-tier actor. He was one of the most respected black actors in Hollywood, especially as it pertained to other black actors. This movie is wild, it is brutal, it's smart, and it moves. It moves. There is not one moment in this movie where you get you want more. There, at the end of this, it's like, give me more, give me more, give me more. Especially for it to have come out in 1995, there was a renaissance of black films in the mid to late 90s. We had a ton of really, really, really good black films, especially after Boys in the Hood. It seemed like after Boys in the Hood, we really got a string of black films that were just unfuckwithable. We didn't get a whole lot of horror, not with black leads, but this film, this is that film. It is so good, and a lot of people don't like it. I know a lot of older people don't like it, but it really speaks to a very specific time in Black history as far as what was going on with us, what was going on within the community, how the past pertains and relates to what is going on in 1995. And it's one of those films that holds up because it says things that we are still talking about right now. I think this movie is genius. I think it is Oscar worthy. I think it deserves way more than it gets. We need to praise this film more. We need to lift this film up more because it has so many things to say. It did so much, and it did a lot of it so fast. I wanted more. And then when we got to Rusty Cardiff, he directed the underrated Fear the Black Hat, and he did a lot of TV, and the man understands social commentary as it pertains to comedy. Also, he did a couple of the segments for the newer Creep Show that's on Shudder now, and he did a lot of episodes of Black Jesus, which is just stupid funny. Does this movie have problems? Yep. Every movie on this list has problems. I don't care. I don't care. You don't care. And that's what makes a good film. That's what makes a good B movie, because something can have problem after problem after problem. And you like, you know what? I don't care about that because everything else is so good that it does not matter. I recommend this. I recommend that you buy it. I recommend that you show it to your friends. Have drinking parties with it. Make drinking games out of it. It is the best Black horror movie ever made, as far as I am concerned. Say what you will. So that's it for this. I know this was a long one. I'm sorry. But it's been a while since I've talked to you guys, and I love talking to you about movies. Thank you for subscribing and liking and commenting and engaging with me. I love talking about these films, and I definitely try to respond to as many of the comments as possible. So please, if any of these movies made your list, put them below. Let me see what your list is. I'm very interested in seeing what people have on their list. And I will catch you next time.
Candy.